Hello, everyone. My name is Linda Griffin. I'm the Education Programs Coordinator with Business Link, and thank you for joining our webinar today. At Business Link, we are honored to provide services to all entrepreneurs and specialty services to our immigrant and Indigenous entrepreneurs. We are inclusive in our cultural understanding and awareness of the histories of our country. With that, we'll start this event with a land acknowledgement for all of Alberta. We want to acknowledge that in the province of Alberta, we are situated on the traditional territories of Treaties 4, 6, 7, 8, and 10, ancestral homeland of diverse First Nations group, Métis and Indigenous people whose ancestors have walked this land since time immemorial, and whose histories, languages, and cultures continue to influence our vibrant community. We pay respects to the Indigenous people of this land, past, present, and future, while recognizing their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land on which we reside. A little bit of housekeeping today. If you look to the bottom of your screen, you're going to see the option to use chat, and next to it, you're going to see the option for Q&A. Our speakers today will be putting links and helpful resources into chat. And if you have questions or want to ask questions throughout the sessions, you're welcome to type in your questions into the Q&A box. You're also welcome to say hi in the chat. That's not a problem, and we'll do the same back to you as well. This is being recorded, which means access to this recording will happen within the next few days on the Business Link website. So that's just a little bit of housekeeping so everyone's well aware of that happening. Today, we have Darren and Desiree from Statistics Canada who will be presenting finding statistics on the Statistics Canada website. For those of you who've taken our market research foundation workshop, this one's for you to deep dive into how to find all the goodies and all the information you need from a market research perspective on the StatsCan website. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Darren and Desiree, and they can take it away.
Thank you, Leslie. Desiree, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Darren, and welcome everyone taking time to join today's sessions exploring business data on Statistics Canada website. My name is Desiree. I'm working with Darren with the engagement program with Statistics Canada Vancouver Data Service Center. I'm physically located in Vancouver, so before the session starts, I'd like to acknowledge the land that I'm physically in and able to join the sessions, and I'm so grateful to be able to live in the beautiful unceded territory of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I know folks joining us today is across Alberta and across the country, like Darren, he's physically in the Winnipeg. So I would encourage you to take a moment to acknowledge the land before the session starts. So, over to you, Darren.
Thank you, Desiree. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Bonjour tout le monde, bienvenue. As Desiree said, my name is Darren Lasupski, and I am a consulting analyst with Statistics Canada in Winnipeg. So in the spirit of reconciliation for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit brothers and sisters, I am joining you from Treaty 1 territory, home of the Métis. So welcome. So today we're going to be talking about finding business statistics on Statistics Canada's website. I have a few slides I want to show you, but I'm also going to be going to Statistics Canada's website and trying to make this a little bit more dynamic and interactive. As we've already indicated, if you have questions, please feel free to post them in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer them. I will also try and make sure that I leave some time at the end. Can't guarantee, but I'll try to make sure I leave some time at the end so we might be able to have some questions answered live if you're so inclined. But with that, I know we only have an hour, so I'd like to get started. And I'm going to share my screen. So let me just call up the presentation slides. And if everyone can just confirm that you're able to see the presentation slides, someone can just confirm, I would appreciate it.
Yes, we can.
Everyone can see it? Okay, so thank you. So we're here today because Statistics Canada has an immense amount of information that we want Canadians to be able to access. This is your data. and we want people to be able to know what's available, be able to find the information that might be helpful to you. All of you come from different perspectives with respect to what you might be using this type of data for, or what you might need it for. You might be developing a business plan. You might be thinking about potential business opportunities. You might be just trying to understand what some of the factors that might go into creating a business, like costs and market size and things of that nature. So we're going to give you an introduction to a host of different data sources that might be useful to you, with a particular focus on business. And so before we do that, though, I just want to sort of highlight exactly what we're sort of going to try and cover today. One of the reasons that I'm going to purposely go to Statistics Canada's website is because, and I don't know how familiar many of you might be with using Statistics Canada's website, but we often do hear that it can be a bit overwhelming to be able to find information that you're looking for. So we want to try and demystify some of that intimidation that is associated with going to the website, sort of finding information. And then, of course, we want to use this as a springboard to get you to start feeling comfortable and conversant with going to the website frequently and looking through the data. We'll not be able to cover everything in great detail today, but I want to make sure that you're familiar with and that you're aware of some of the data sources that might be available to you. So before we get into that, of course, we want to spend just a few moments talking a little bit about the Statistics Canada as an agency. And Desiree and I are always welcome to do these presentations. We always sort of welcome the invitation to do these because as part of the National Statistical Agency, our job is to collect, compile, and report information about Canada and Canadians, about the economy, about the demography, about the resources and the culture of Canada. But our job is also to make sure that people are able to use the data and use the information correctly. And so part of the opportunity to come and do presentations like this is to build some of that data capacity, that data literacy, so people are able to sort of find the information. So that's one of the reasons, and part of our mission is to be able to serve Canadians with good information. And, we are the National Statistical Agency. We do have a host of different surveys that we do. I'm just going to show you a very quick introduction to some of them, but there are at any times over 400 different surveys and data collection activities that Statistics Canada is involved with. So there may be topics or themes that I don't necessarily touch on today that might be of interest to you. So again, please feel free to visit Statistics Canada's website, become familiar with it, and just sort of delve into what's there to be used. And again, the information is there. It's your information. This is information that belongs to Canadians. We want you to use it. And Desiree always like to say it's available 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year. So you're welcome to come and explore and find some good, reliable, trusted information that hopefully will be helpful in terms of not just from a business perspective, but just as a citizen's perspective, to be able to use information to help you understand the world. So some of the things we're going to talk about in terms of the data sources I'm going to highlight today are, we have data that allows you to look at the market composition. So I'm going to introduce you to data sets like the census that gives you an indication, or sort of you can use as a benchmark to understand how large a market might be. What are the characteristics of that market in terms of their social or cultural backgrounds and things of that nature? What are their education levels? What are their income levels? So we'll talk a little bit about some of those data sources. We'll talk about how information on businesses, and particularly how businesses are classified in terms of industry, how that information is reported on Statistics Canada's website and other sources. I'm going to take you to a couple of sources at the end that are primarily based on Statistics Canada data, but are not necessarily on Statistics Canada's website. and they are sources that provide information on business characteristics and financial performance indicators and things of that nature. And they use and often use what are called the NAICS, or the North American Industrial Classification System. So I'm going to introduce you to, if you're not familiar with it, the NAICS system, or the North American Industrial Classification System. And it's really helpful to be familiar with that classification, because that's how much of business data is reported on Statistics Canada's website, and as you'll see on other websites such as Innovation in Science and Economic Development Canada. They're reporting data by NAICS. Then we'll talk a little bit about some of the specific data surveys that we have that might give you an indication of the, how much are people spending on particular goods and services. So we'll talk about surveys like the Survey of Household Spending and things of that nature. And we'll talk about retail and wholesale trade data and things of that nature. So again, many of you, or all of you, are likely coming from many different perspectives in terms of how you might want to be using this information. So we've tried to cover sort of the waterfront of the different perspectives. And then I'll close up by talking about financial performance and information on, what are likely business costs and business expenses and revenues for different industrial industries and sectors and things of that nature. So that's essentially what we're going to try and cover today. I'm not going to do, we have a PowerPoint, and we're happy to share with you the information that I'm going to cover, but what I'd like to do is to just make this a little bit more dynamic. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to go to the StatsCan website, and I'm going to walk you through where you find some of the data that I'm going to highlight. If I go too quickly, just let me know. I'm happy to revisit. But we'll also be posting links to different sectors, different sections that I'm covering throughout today. So that's a quick introduction to what we're going to cover today. I hope that's sort of piqued your curiosity. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm just going to call up the Statistics Canada's website. So if anyone can just confirm you're able to see the StatsCan website right now?
Yes, we can.
You can? Okay, wonderful. So again, we have a specific session called Navigating Statistics Canada's website that actually spends some time just walking you through how you can go about finding the type of information that is available. If you're looking for specific information by specific topics, you can go to the subject tab along the top of the homepage. This is the homepage of Statistics Canada. This is where you can find information on our daily, which is our daily newsletter, as well as other release information on other data that we've released for that day. So you see today, for example, in the daily, we have a release on national balance accounts and health reports and things of that nature. So I just want to draw people's attention to some of the characteristics and some of the resources that are available on the StatsCan website. But what I'd like to do is focus more on, because we only have an hour, is to focus more on some of the specific data sets we want to draw your attention to. And the first one I'm going to draw your attention to is the one where I talked about how do you go about sort of understanding just the market composition and the characteristics of the population that might make up your potential market. And in that regard, perhaps the best place to start is with the census of population. And the census of population, among all the surveys and data collection activities that Statistics Canada conducts, the census is our largest undertaking. It's our largest sort of project. And it's done every 5 years. So unlike a survey like the labor force survey, which is done monthly, the census is done every 5 years, but it collects information about all Canadians. The census is a complete enumeration of the entire population at a point in time. And so we just want to draw people's attention to what's available from the census. As I said, if you go to the StatsCan homepage or webpage, you'll see that there are some I call them tabs. I don't know if they're actually tabs or not. Then you'll see these blue sort of tabs along the top, subjects where you can look for subjects, data, you can look for data, analysis where you can look for articles from the daily, a reference where you can find reference materials, definitions, user guides, and things of that nature. Information on geography, how the information is disseminated, at what levels, and then a specific tab specific to the census. And because the census is such an important undertaking for us, that we give it a specific tab on our webpage. And I just want to draw people's attention to, I'm just going to take you to the census homepage or landing page for the census. And I just want to draw people's attention to the type of information that's available from the census, because it will give you information on the size of your population, the age structure of your population. You can get information on people's educational attainment levels or income levels, but you can also look to see characteristics like whether people own or rent, or if you have a large segment of the population that are immigrants or newcomers to Canada, as well as labor force characteristics and things of that nature. How many people are working? What industries are people working in? You can get a sense of how many people are working in a particular industry and what their median or average income is. So it's a pretty complete data set, and its advantage is that it allows you to look at very small areas within Canada. So you can look at particular communities. And if you're looking for market segments or trying to anticipate how big your market is, the census can be a really useful tool for trying to get some of that benchmark information, some of those basic indicators that can be so useful. So we have an entire workshop and sessions that deal just with the census. I certainly encourage you, if you're interested, to contact myself or Desiree, and we'll let you know when the next sessions are. And if you want to learn more detail about the census data, those avenues, those opportunities are available. So that's the first sort of aspect I wanted to use as a starting point to get you to think about business data. We haven't gotten to business data yet. I'm just sort of laying the foundation. The other aspect I want to draw your attention to is something I've alluded to, which is the North American Industrial Classification System. And I'm just going to use the search function on StatsCan's website to just call up some information about NAICS. I'm just going to click search. And I just want to give you a quick introduction to exactly what it is and how you understand it. The basic premise is that we've classified the nature of work or the types of activities that industries are doing by broad classifications. And then the NAICS allows you to look at more and more detail. So the more detailed the NAICS code, the more detailed the information about the particular industrial activity. And you'll see later where or how valuable being familiar with some of the NAICS codes or North American Industrial Classification codes can be. So I'm just going to take you to a link on the StatsCan website that gives you a brief description about the classification, its logic and its basis, and then the broad classifications of how the information is organized. And then if you're interested particularly in, for example, the retail industry, maybe you're thinking of looking at opening a store or something of that nature, you'll have the broad classification. Then if I click on this link, it'll take me to additional detailed information. It'll describe the activities that are comprised within that. And you'll start to see that the more detailed the NAICS code, the more detailed the information about the particular industry. And you can delve into it further and further. So if I wanted to know more about food and beverage retailers, maybe I'm thinking of starting a food and beverage establishment. This is just one example. You might have a host of different perspectives, but if I want to learn more, again, you simply sort of click on the link and it'll take you to even more additional information. And you can start to get information on the number of establishments and things of that nature, and the characteristics and what those industries are. So if you're interested in convenience retailers or specialty food retailers, you can, again, go further and further. And the NAICS goes up to about 5 digits. So the more detailed the NAICS, the more detailed the information about the particular industry. And if I wanted to, I can just keep delving in. The nice thing is it'll give you an information about sort of the industry and its activity, and it'll describe what's involved with all the different sort of levels or hierarchies. We'll call them hierarchies in the industrial classification system. So that's a quick introduction to that. I hope that hasn't scared you off, but I just wanted to sort of underline how helpful it is to be familiar with this type of information, because you'll often see information reported by NAICS codes. Okay, so if there are any questions on that, feel free to post in the chat, or if there's anything that is unclear, feel free to let me know, and I'm happy to revisit it when we come back to the questions. That's a quick introduction. I'm just going to go back to the StatsCan homepage, and now I'd like to turn our attention to some specific data sources that are a little bit more specific to the topic today, which is specific to finding business statistics. The first data source I want to highlight is what's called the Survey of Household Spending, and this is a data set that will provide information on how many or how much Canadians are spending on different components of their household expenditures. So I'm just going to, again, just use the search function. Just keep this simple. Survey of household spending. I'm just going to call up the information. And I just wanted to highlight here that in October, I forgot to put the date down, but in October, the next release of the Survey of Household Spending will be released. I don't remember the exact date, but it will be shortly. So if people are looking for data about the Survey of Household Spending, you can collect information, or you can find information about the survey. And I'm just going to sort of highlight exactly what type of information is collected. So we have information about families, households. We have information about household characteristics. So renters, owners, households, and what they spend on. So what are households spending on food, meals outside the home, car repair, a whole host of different characteristics, as well as what people are spending on in terms of household equipment, computers, televisions, cell phones, things of that nature. So this can be an extremely useful data source for you to be familiar with, in terms of if you're trying to think about establishing a benchmark of how much people are spending on basic or different items. It also allows you to look at spending by what's called household income quintiles. So you can look to see high income households, low income households, and how much they spend on different commodities. So it's a very, very useful tool, a very useful data source that I definitely want people to be familiar with. So that's a survey of household spending. As I said, October, there'll be new releases for the most recent data from the last collection period, and you can look to see what type of information is available. If I have time, I'll try and sort of delve into some of the specific tables, but the data is going to be from the last release from that survey. So that's the first sort of specific business data source I wanted to highlight. And I'm just going to go back to the home site and sort of introduce the other really important one, which I wanted to draw people's attention to, which is information on Canadian businesses. And Canadian business data allows us to look at how many businesses there are in communities by different industrial activities or different classifications. So I'm just going to call up business counts. And this is information that's released twice a year. and we can start to look at, for example, data for June. We have data for businesses with employees and data for businesses without employees, so small businesses. And it's information that allows us to look at, again, how many businesses there are by size, by number of employees, less than 4 employees, 5 to 9, 9 to 20, or larger businesses, as well as looking at different communities across the country. So you can look to see in terms of by industry, how many businesses there are. For people who are new to StatsCan's website, I just wanted to sort of draw your attention to when you come to a data table like the example I'm showing here, we can add and remove information to that table. So we can add additional information. So if you're not familiar with working with StatsCan tables, these are all publicly available tables. This is the information that's the basic information, but if you go to the Add Remove tab and click on Add Remove, you can add additional information to the specific table. So for example, under Geography, I have the default setting for all StatsCan tables are Canada, but you might be interested particularly in Alberta. So any variable, any sort of topic that you see in a data table has a plus sign in front of it. I'm hovering over it with my mouse right now. If I click on that plus sign, it will allow me to have more additional detail. And so I might only be interested in information for Alberta, for example. So I can just select Alberta. And if I were to click apply, it would reduce the data to just information for Alberta specific. But you might be interested in all provinces. So you might be interested in whatever communities you would be interested in. You can look at employment status or employment size. So again, if there's a plus size, it allows us to look at not just the total number, but how many industries in my community have more than 500 employees. So this data will allow us to show that. Are they big employers? Are they small? And then we can look by NAICS, or particularly industry classification. So again, we can look at all those different sort of broad classifications that I showed you when I showed you the classification. And we can delve into it even further and further. You'll start to see that the NAICS codes get more and more detail. So if you're interested in a particular industry and particular detailed information, for example, health and personal retail, I might be particularly interested in that. I'm going to select that and I'm going to apply, and that will now provide information for not just all businesses, but for the number of businesses in that specific industry in my province or territory. And there are tables that allow you to look at even down to the city level. So that's the business counts data, and that comes out twice a year, June and December. So a data source we definitely want you to be familiar with. Again, this serves as a starting point to say, well, how many businesses are there in the industry I'm interested in or industry that I'm exploring? So this is a good starting point for delving into further detail. So that's a quick introduction to that sort of really key data source that I want to bring people's attention to. And then I want to draw your attention now to more specific business-related data. So these are sort of introductions to the data set. I'm just going to go to the home. And in this case, I'm going to go to the subjects. And I just want to draw your attention to the type of information from a business perspective when we use this approach to find data. And we can look at, there are two sort of broad subjects we can look at: business, consumer services and culture, business performance and ownership. But we can also look at trade. And trade, retail and wholesale trade, is part of our broad business data perspective. So I might be particularly interested in looking at trade data. I might be particularly interested in retail trade or wholesale trade. And so if I click on the trade data, that will take us to what's called our international trade hub. And it's basically a source where you can find all of the different trade-related data in one place. So it makes it a little bit easier to find your way around the Statistics Canada website by having particular hubs and focus on particular topics. And so I want to draw people's attention to things like the information on retail trade or information on the Canadian world trade or wholesale trade and things of that nature. And there are surveys that collect data on retail trade. We have monthly surveys that provide information on large retailers. We have information about just monthly surveys on retailers. We have yearly wholesale trade and things of that nature. So I can look at specific data sets, for example, data tables that allow me to get a sense of who our trading partners are and things of that nature. I also want to sort of draw your attention to one of the most important or one of the most active trade aspects on StatsCan's website, which is the Canadian International Merchandise Trade application. And here you can look at specific data in terms of who are our leading trading partners by exports and imports. And this is classified by what's called the HS codes, or harmonization codes. So slightly different than NAICS, but and somewhat similar. And you can look again to look at imports if you're thinking about particular imports, or if you're looking at particular export information. You can look at information by who are Canada's leading importers and what exactly are we bringing in by commodity and by different time periods and things of that nature. So who are our top trading partners, as well as by province, as well as then selecting the particular characteristics or types of import trade or import merchandise that you might be looking for. So that's an important source of information with respect to trade data on StatsCan's website. And again, trade data allows you to sort of measure, market supply and demand and things of that nature. So it could be very important when you're starting to look at, again, from different perspectives, business planning perspectives and things of that nature. So that's a quick introduction. Again, I'm hoping this serves just as a springboard for you to recognize how you could delve into this this data set when you have more time, and look to see what type of information you can pull. You can look at trade that is specific to the US. So who are top trading partners with respect to, from a provincial perspective, in terms of trade with the United States, and which states. So we can again start to see sort of that unique perspective in terms of our largest trading partner. So this is one aspect of the data set that can be extremely useful. So that's trade data, retail and wholesale, as well as just international trade data. And then I want to draw people's attention to the last sort of specific source I'm going to show you from Statistics Canada's website, which is a new survey that Statistics Canada has been conducting since the introduction of COVID. And that is a survey called the Canadian Survey on Business Conditions. Again, I'm just going to use the search because it's something that everyone will be able to sort of recognize. So the Canadian Survey on Business Conditions. And this is a survey that I'm just going to speak to very briefly today, but we've actually developed a whole session where we delve into this survey for an hour because of the nature of the type of data that's available from the survey. It's a survey that allows us to look at, in a quarterly basis, what are business expectations, what are business barriers, or what are the barriers that businesses are running into, what are some of the issues that they're running into from a supply chain or from a debt load perspective. It's a wide-ranging survey that covers on a whole host of different topics. So I just want to sort of draw your attention to the most recent release from this survey. And give you an indication of the type of information that the survey collects with respect to what are some of the issues and concerns that businesses are dealing with: rising inflation, labor demands, and things of that nature. And so this can be an extremely useful source for people to be familiar with. And I just want to draw your attention to the different tables and the nature of the information that is collected, from business organization obstacles that businesses are expecting or anticipating over the next 3 months, to whether businesses are planning to hire or anticipating reductions in employment over the next 3 months, and things of that nature. So there's a wide range of topics that are covered, from anticipated changes in level of remote work, from no remote work to some, and future outlook for the next 12 months in terms of how optimistic, pessimistic business owners, this is data collected from business owners, are with respect to a whole host of different challenges that businesses are facing. So that's, again, that's the Canadian Survey on Business Conditions. The data is reported quarterly. I really encourage you to sort of delve into it. The survey is conducted where there are standard questions asked every survey, and then every survey there are some new questions asked. So the topics do change over time, and so you'll start to see that there are sort of a range of different topics that are covered in the survey. So that's a quick introduction to sort of the main topics of business statistics on StatsCan's website, where to find them, how to sort of access them. Before we go, I want to make sure I leave some time for questions, but before we go, I just wanted to draw your attention to a couple of other data sources that aren't necessarily on Statistics Canada's website, but they're primarily based on Statistics Canada's data. And these are data sources on Canadian industry statistics, as well as financial performance data for different businesses in Canada. So revenues and expenditures and things of that nature, balance sheet items and things of that nature. And these are data sources that are housed on the Innovation and Science Economic Development website within the federal government. So I'm just going to use StatsCan's website as an example. If you've seen along the top, I've sort of highlighted the topics that are along those tabs. The last one will take you to the actual website for the Government of Canada. And so if I click on the Government of Canada website, here you can look for any government department that you'd be interested in, whether it be Immigration and Refugee Citizenship Canada or Health Canada or things of that nature. Today, because we're focusing on business, I'm going to sort of draw your attention to Innovation and Science and Economic Development. So I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom, just take you down to departments. And again, you'll see all of my colleagues in the various federal government departments, but I want to draw your attention to Innovation, Science, and Economic Development Canada. And here, if I click on this, we'll take you to their homepage, just like StatsCan's homepage. And you'll be able to see, and I want to draw your attention specifically to research and business intelligence information. There are other ways to sort of access the same information, but I'm going to sort of keep it simple and show you the sort of, in my opinion, the sort of quickest shortcut to be able to get to the data I want to draw your attention to. So if you look the different options that are available, if you go to Research and Business Intelligence, and you click on Research and Business Intelligence, you'll get an indication of sort of the different services and information that this department has. I want to draw your attention to two specific aspects, which is the industry sector intelligence, which is where you'll be able to start to look at some of the industry statistics specific to particular industries. And then I'm also going to show you the financial performance aspect data, which allows you to get some indication of by business sizes, how are they faring with respect to revenues and expenditures and things of that nature. So again, information that can be extremely useful if you're trying to develop a business plan, or if you're just trying to sort of foster and encourage different businesses to think about sort of different avenues. This is information that can be extremely helpful to them. So I just want to make sure that we have time. I'm going to look at the industry and sector intelligence tab, and you'll see here that we've got Canadian industry statistics, we've got construction industry, energy industry. I'm going to keep it simple here. You might have specifics or specific topic you're interested in, but I'm going to keep it simple for today because it's just an introduction. If I go to the Canadian industries statistics tab, it will bring you now to a list of some of those businesses and topics that we sort of saw when we looked at the NAICS classifications. And you can even look by, if you're interested in a particular NAICS, you can search by a particular NAICS classification, or you might be interested in, a particular industry, retail trade, for example, or you can look by a particular NAICS code. So let's do 311. We showed you earlier when I showed you those examples of the NAICS codes, and as you click on them, they get more and more detailed. Food manufacturing was one of the sort of examples I used. So we can look at this particular, we can look in details that are available to us. But if we're interested in food manufacturing, if I click on that, this is going to provide us with some really useful information with respect to the number of businesses, just like we showed you earlier, but also in terms of financial performance with respect to average revenue, profitability, salaries and wages. What's the average salary, total salaries in this particular industry? Again, extremely useful if you're thinking about budgeting or business plan development, as well as a list of sort of additional information in terms of types of salaries over time and things of that nature, wages over time, things of that nature. So that can be extremely useful with respect to a particular industry that you're interested in or industries that you're interested in. So that's one aspect of the data that I wanted to draw your attention to. And again, you can look at additional detail. And then the other aspect I want to sort of draw your attention to, and again, this is we look by codes, is the financial performance data. And so if I go down here, this again will allow us to look at financial performance. And here we're talking about revenues and expenditures by different industries. And you can look at popular industries, you can look at related information that's available, as I've shown you, or you can create a sort of a custom report or create a report that will give you some basic information about the industry that you're interested in. So this will allow us to look at by size, revenue range, by location. So you might be interested particularly in Alberta, business type, incorporated, non-incorporated, as well as, again, by particular NAICS classification. So I'm just going to keep the 311 NAICS code just as an example, but you're welcome to use whatever you like. And again, it just underlines how useful it is to be familiar with the NAICS codes, and it will allow us to get an indication of, okay, which particular activity within that NAICS code are you interested in. I'm going to keep it simple because this is the intro. I'm just going to say food manufacturing, and I'm going to click create report. And this is going to give us an indication of, okay, here is some information that's really useful based on profit margin or profitability, sales and goods and things of that nature, so costs of sales, operating expenses, labor expenses, rent, things of that nature by different income levels, as well as by particular NAICS activities and things of that nature. And then other balance sheet considerations that you need to be aware of. And some of the data might not be available. You'll see, and this happens quite often, that the more detailed the NAICS code, you'll sometimes run into less and less specific information that's available. So while NAICS can be really useful, and the more detailed, the more useful, you do have to recognize that sometimes you'll have to sort of use a broader classification to be able to sometimes get all the information that you might be looking for. So with that, I hope that was helpful. That's really all that we wanted to cover today, the StatsCan resources, as well as resources that are available outside Statistics Canada's website. So with that, I'm going to open it to questions. We still have time. If people have questions, or if there's a section that I went over too quickly, please feel free to let me know. So any questions?
Well, I have a question.
Yes, please.
For anyone who's on this call, has anyone on this call tried to find their NAICS code? And if so, had trouble finding their NAICS code? If you have, put in the Q&A what the type of businesses you have, and maybe we can help you find your NAICS code, because this is the start of everything, really, for everyone who wants to. So if you're looking to do your own market research and you've had trouble finding your NAICS code, this would be the time. These are the people who know how to get you that NAICS code, because I know that seems to be a barrier for a lot of people who are in industries that don't seem to fit or can't seem to find their fit with the industry. So
and if I may, that is a sort of a challenge we do hear quite often is, well, I have a barbershop and a meat store. Where do I go? Where do I fall in? So when I showed you early on the Statistics Canada's website, I showed you the NAICS classification. I don't know if I did or not, but there's a little tab that says definitions, and it will give you a description of exactly what are the type of activities that are classified under this NAICS. So sometimes that's helpful. But it does happen, and sometimes people are not sure which NAICS they should fall under or which code they should fall under. And sometimes the system is continually evolving. We didn't have a NAICS code for cannabis sales not that long ago, or things of that nature. So financial activities that may not necessarily be classified specifically under. So we do run into that. So yes, please, if you do have questions about your NAICS code, or if you want me to look up one while we're here, I'd be happy to do that. So it is a good question, and it's a question we do hear more often than you would think.
Okay, so if anyone has that question, feel free to type it in. I have another question too, which is one of the challenges that I run into even with my own business is business to business research, trying to research for that. Do you have any tips for that?
Business to business. So
if I want to find out, about for example, if I want to sell services to lawyers and law offices and find sort of statistics on that, what path would you take if you were doing that kind of research to see, well, how I'm looking for, what are sizes of firms in Alberta between, what is the average revenue for those firms between, 1 and 5 lawyers per firm, that kind of thing.
A great question. So the initial question there's two that I would go to initially. First off is not this source, but the data source I just showed you earlier, which is the basic industry statistics link will be a good starting point just in terms of by particular industry activity, what are their revenues and things of that nature. So that's going to be a good starting point. The other source I would go to, and it may not necessarily be broken down by industries per se, so you can't necessarily say, which industry is buying from which, is the survey of household spending. Because the survey of household spending gives you an indication. And I only touched on the tip of the iceberg in terms of the level of detail of what that survey captures with respect to how much our businesses spending or how much our household, because the survey of household spending is a survey of households, as its name implies. So it's not necessarily by particular industries, but you can get an indication of what people are spending on particular services and particular goods. So that might be a sort of a starting point. But it's a really challenging question because unless Desiree, please feel free to interject, but I can't think off the top of my head of a specific data source that would allow us to look. The only source I could think of are what we call our input and output tables that are used as part of the national income statistics, where we can look to see by industry how much are this particular industry buying from this particular industry and what are their outputs. So input output tables is another one, but I don't know at the level of detail whether it would be able to answer the question. Desiree, please feel free to add.
That is about another options. When Linda, you mentions about identify a niche for business to business, like for example, a law firm, then I personally will think about what sort of service that your organization is going to offer. Like for example, whether it is like for example, office administrative service or business supportive service, that would be the directions I will dive into to identify what sort of service you're going to offer to a law firm. Because for the next book, that is more about what type of or category of service or products you're going to offer. So it's either on a business to business basis or to a household or to other, for example, wholesale retail level. I would go with thinking about I will start with to look at the categories of what type of service that you're going to offer. Like for example, if this is about the administrative and supportive service, then I would suggest like perhaps going into the structures of the classifications and then dive into the subcategory. And there is an illustrative example under each of the subcategory of the next code. Then you would be able to have a little bit more better understanding on what type of example that you may consider the needs for your business. So Darren, please jump in anytime if I miss anything or if I'm wrong.
No, I'm agreeing completely with your approach or your perspective in terms of the how I would go about it. Because if you would think about what services are you offering, and then look by the particular services by those particular NAICS. And I'm just calling up the NAICS classifications just to give an indication of what Desiree is alluding to in terms of public administration may not be the best example, but other services we can look at the sort of the level of activities that we could be that the classification code might allow us to look at. So I would start there as well as just to see. But it's a really challenging question in terms of business to business as opposed to just overall. Yeah. Sorry.
We have another question. Is it possible for members of the public to seek the expertise of Statistics Canada professionals for in-depth research guidance on a temporary basis or for a few hours or for a fee? Is that possible?
Well, yes and no. Desiree as well.
I can answer from a Business Link standpoint. So for this particular person on our call, I can say Business Link has a free market research support service that you can access. So we access the StatsCan database. We access a number of others like Statista and a number of other ones. So if you have taken our market research for business success and understand what it is you're looking for and how you're going to look for it and how you're going to dive into it, we have another one coming up the end of September. That's a $15 session. That's going to teach you how to sort of ask the right questions. But once you've done that, accessing our free market research department opens up a world of databases to you, including Stats Canada and Industry Canada. And Barry, our guru, who's been doing it for 25 years, is able to guide you for free through all of that. Another source is your local library with your library card. If you go to the business services section in your local library, they will help you trudge through databases and industry, all sorts of stuff there as well. So don't forget your local library. And Desiree and Darren, any other thoughts on digging in?
If I may, Desiree, just you've touched on it, Linda, because I was going to say from the perspective in terms of consulting or hiring them, there are services like yourselves. I mean, Winnipeg, we have a World Trade Center that allows people to come in and they can tap into those expertise and those experts, and they offer training as well. From a StatsCan perspective, what we do is we offer the opportunity. Well, I'm a consulting analyst, so my job, part of my job, is to help Canadians find the data. But I'm not necessarily there to consult or to advise. I'm simply there to point you to what data is available. But if you do have a specific data set that might require a custom request, there are opportunities sometimes to get data that's not necessarily available on the public site, but that can be extracted from our data sets. Those are done at a cost, but I can help with that. But in terms of the fostering or the mentoring, there are others that are out there, and I would encourage that the library is one that is definitely, as well as agencies like the one that Linda's working with and things of that nature. So I don't know, Desiree, if you want to feel free to add, but StatsCan, we're here to help, but we're not necessarily here to as a consulting activity, even though my title is consulting analyst. I don't know, Desiree.
I think we've got it covered. I think we've covered it off, everyone. I'm just checking to see. Awesome. I think we got that question answered. Perfect. Okay, so we are 4 minutes to the hour. I don't see any other questions coming in, so maybe we've covered it off. There's a lot of material and a lot of information session, and reminding folks that you can always reach out if you go to businesslink.ca. You can reach out to us anytime. We've got strategists free for you to call. We have our market research, which is free for you to use. We have lots of programming and workshopping around market research. So that's always happening. Check our upcoming webinars. The last market research one we had sold out. So if you want to jump in, we have those a few times per quarter on those as well. And I think we are covered off. So I appreciate everyone joining us today. Thank you for taking the time. Reach out anytime to Business Link for any additional support. And thanks everyone coming today. Really appreciate that, and hope everyone enjoys a good lunch and a good autumn break. And I'm looking forward to seeing Darren and Desiree a few more times. They'll be coming back in January for sure, possibly November. I think we may have you coming in. So you'll be back and it'll be as fabulous as always. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and I hope it was helpful, everyone. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, too.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Linda. I hope
Take
that was
care. Beautiful. It was great.